Connecting. Okay, well, hey, hello and welcome everyone to the Obsidian Community Talks. This is on Zotero 101 featuring Argentina Ortega Sanz. I hope I'm saying that fairly well. My name is Nick Milo. I'm part of the Obsidian community as well, and we're just excited to be here and to, to kind of get going on something that's quite interesting for a lot of us, which is how to take something we find online, particularly a PDF, an academic paper, and put it into a reference manager that then can link to our place where we're dealing with that information, whether it's Obsidian or something else. But how do we use this reference manager, specifically when it's Zotero, which is free and open source? I'm no expert here. I'm an amateur researcher, but we do have some people who I might classify as an expert, and that's our presenter today. Argentina, how are you doing?
Hi, Nick. Thanks. I'm doing very well. I don't know if I would classify myself as an expert. I'm more of an advanced user, I would say. I've spent some time in the settings and on the hidden Zotero places. So I know a bit more than the average user, but I don't know if I'm an expert as such.
Okay, well, it's good to be humble. The reason I'm so excited for you to present, though, is because you do have an interesting skill set. You're very active on the Obsidian forums. You're a moderator. You've developed a plugin for Zotero and Obsidian, an integration that works between the two.
Yeah.
And you're giving this talk because you're an active academic. So you kind of have this nice trifecta. And I'm just really excited that I'm able to MC and kind of soak it in, and that you're able to share all this with us. So yeah, let's get this party going. I'm here to help. Everyone, let's throw questions in the chat. There might be a link to Slido if anyone's interested in Slido, and I'll try to share that in the chat momentarily, and we can use that to kind of compile our questions as we find them.
Yeah, I will show very soon a slide where you all can interact. So we will set this up so that it's a bit also more interactive, and you guys can also push questions, see questions on the screen, and so forth. All right, then let's get this party started. Let me close the slide first. A moment, I need to close my Zotero and then bring Zotero here, right? And then let's open this one. Okay, so I'm gonna have the slides up here on the right, because these are not like real slides. They are more sort of like a guide for you guys to know where I am at the moment I'm explaining something. And the idea I have for the talk is to make this very much a walkthrough. The idea is to get you guys set up, or to have you guys basically follow a guide where you can set things up, so you are basically able to use Zotero if you want to use Zotero with Obsidian at the end of the talk. So I went ahead, just for a little bit of context, I went ahead and created an empty profile. I'm not going to go into how to do that because that's a bit more advanced. But the idea is basically this is, except for the fourth items you see already here, basically I'm starting with Zotero from scratch. I don't have any settings set up or anything installed yet. So you're basically going to see me do what you would do if you start with Zotero as well. With one tiny difference, that I've done this quite a few times, so I already have some knowledge and I know where to look for things, which is, I think, maybe one of the challenges when trying to set things up. Okay, so then let's get started. And the first thing that we need to ask ourselves is, why do you actually want to use Zotero, or any reference manager for that matter? And here is where we start with the interactive part. So I'm briefly going to make this full screen so that you guys can set this up. So once you join here, I'm going to set up now one of the polls. And you should be able to vote on one of the questions that I have set up here, just so that we get an idea here of what you guys know in terms of, for example, Zotero or other reference managers. I'm gonna, do you know, Nick, how many people are we currently, so that we basically count the total number of
Sure. Yeah, we're maxed out at 100.
Okay. Okay, very cool. All right, then we wait maybe until, I don't know, at least 90 of you have voted or 70 of you have voted.
Yeah, it took me 5 minutes to log in. It kept telling me 100 was maxed out.
Okay, very good. All right. So I see at least so far, maybe about a quarter of the audience already has used Zotero, which is good. The other maybe quarter of the audience at least has a need for a reference manager. Good. Okay, we seem to be stuck at 65. Maybe we wait until we hit 70, then we'll get more or less a rough idea of how people yeah, are familiar with reference managers. All right, we seem stuck at 68. I don't want to spend too much time here. I just was a bit curious about yeah, sort of the background of you guys.
And just to, sorry to step on you one more time, but for everyone, if you didn't get that at the start, go to slido.com and then it'll ask you to, I know I have some feedback, apologies for that. It'll ask you to put in that hashtag code. So hopefully we can get this now. 75 is pretty good though, 75%. So.
I mean, we're already pretty much at 80. So I think we might not need the whole 800 people to vote. I think the idea is already pretty clear. So I'm just gonna close this one because I have another one that I would like to ask. I'm gonna close this one. Now how comes the next one? So, sorry, for some reason, there you go. So if we want to actually find out why would you use a reference manager? So I already know some of you are already familiar with, but there were a few at the bottom that were either just curious about reference managers or just wanted to annotate PDFs, right? So, and I think that's definitely a valid use case of Zotero. But my goal with this talk is to actually convince you that you do need a reference manager, not only for the PDF annotation capabilities, but because there are certain things that citations allow you to do. Right, so I guess we're gonna do pretty much the same thing. So we're gonna wait maybe till we hit 80, and then we can move on to me giving you a pitch about why you do actually need this. Yeah, we're pretty close. That's pretty good. All right, so I actually sort of assumed that there would be a lot of people who shared notes or content from their notes publicly, especially since a lot of them were already using Zotero for a reference manager. So we had like 50 on the very first slide. All right, I think we hit 80. This is already a pretty good answer. So I'm just gonna go ahead and pause the poll. I think most people in general either want or get ideas from stuff we consume, or yeah, want to share the original notes. So these three main things are, I think, pretty important, and you won't need much convincing, in my opinion, as to why you need the reference manager. All right, so then we can go to my reasons. So basically, all the questions that I just asked you in this survey can be summarized, I think, in these two questions. The first one is, I think, more the academic use case. So if you are an academic and have to publish, or if you are a content creator, a writer, things like this, then you usually need to acknowledge where you got your some of the content from, right? So our notes never live in isolation. We get ideas from things we consume, and therefore, when we make this knowledge public or these notes public, we usually have to, give the proper attribution to the sources that we used. And in academia, obviously, this is tied together with plagiarism and ethics and all these sort of things. But let's assume for a very tiny bit that you don't publish your notes. Your notes are only for yourself. Then why would you use a reference manager in this case? I think the last point applies to both people that share and both people that just use the notes for themselves. And this is because we need to know where ideas came from, and we need to be able to trace back how the idea evolved over time, right? So we get some content from an external source, and by citing that external source and maybe even getting the exact quotation, then we can, let's say, find a mistake or a misunderstanding later on, and it's possible for us then to know what is mine, what is the difference with the thing that I created, and what is originally from someone else. That's one thing. And the other thing is, let's say that you find something that in your notes that is incorrect or potentially false. This could come because you misunderstood. The original author wrote this in a way that you interpreted incorrectly. And by keeping track of where you got the idea and having your notes, then you are able to say, it's my fault. But it is also possible that in the original source that you consumed, there was a mistake, or the author also made a false claim. And you will only know this if you've cited where you got the idea from. So either you propagated, for example, something that was wrong, or you can now basically argue against whatever is it that you read that you don't agree with. Okay, so assuming now that you do want to have a reference manager because you are interested in keeping track of what is yours, what is from someone else, why does these things even exist? So what do they do that it helps us with? So the main thing is the unique IDs, I would say. That's one of the main reasons why you want some tool that helps you manage all this type of knowledge. And you usually get these in reference managers from the database capabilities. Basically, each entry has one sort of unique ID in the database. The other thing is searching and indexing. You basically want to be able to quickly find the source that you are talking about or that you reference in your notes. And this is usually obviously linked to this unique ID. But sometimes you don't memorize the specific ID or the site key that you use. You remember something about the thing that you read, and you want to be able to search this quickly. So the database should be able to help you find things maybe by the author, by the year, by the content of the article that you read, etc. And the last one is the automation of, a bit of help for formatting citations. And this is important, especially if you are in an academic field, because you are definitely required to follow some style. And it's also true for other fields where you actually have to follow certain guidelines when you publish your code, not your codes, your texts. The other, so I mean, right now maybe you are wondering, do I actually need this? If I could, for example, just keep this in my Markdown notes. Yeah, maybe it's possible to do some management, and you can manage to do some unique IDs, and you can search your notes as well. I mean, Obsidian is pretty good for that. However, you have one other thing, and I think this is a long-term thing that maybe we are not aware immediately at the beginning. And once the number of servers that we consume starts to grow and grow and grow and grow, and it scales pretty big over time, especially, then maybe it's a bit hard to do this manually, especially these unique IDs. So you have to start to invest some time on how to name things without some tool that supports you and maybe does some of this automatically already. Okay, so now I'm gonna show a little bit of, so because my goal is to convince you that you need this, I'm gonna show you what you actually can do with it right out of the box. And this is the reason why I added already these first examples. So let's assume now I already have like a small demo vault here that I'm writing something about Earth. When I add something to Zotero, Zotero already gives me the option to copy the citation and the bibliography. So these are the two different things. Let's say, so I haven't added the first book, but let's say now I am, I'm gonna cite this, the life, the universe, and everything, right? So I'm gonna type some text here. No, instead of the meaning, it's more about this 42. And then when I paste, oh, sorry, let's see, what did I do? Ah, here comes one bit. Maybe just for the purposes of this demo, I should already choose a different style. So I'm gonna just choose something randomly. I'm gonna go for maybe Chicago, okay? Okay, so I'm gonna do this again. I'm gonna copy the citation because this is the thing that okay, maybe this was the default one, which I don't like. I'm gonna go then for a slightly different one, which is the one I know. So I'm going with IEEE. Again, we start from scratch. Then I copy the citation. Something is wrong. This is funny. Okay. Should be copying something else. Let's see if I copy the bibliography then. Yeah, okay, maybe it's, no, I know what is maybe happening. Yeah, okay. I guess it's the pasting stuff. So I'm gonna do again. Maybe it will work this time. Yeah, not exactly sure. Maybe it's the style. I don't know what is going on. This did not happen before. Did I not choose this correctly? Type review. Okay, let's try again. Copy citation. No. Okay, I'm gonna give up. It's okay, it doesn't matter. We will fix this later. The point is, I'm gonna do this manually now. In theory, you should have gotten a 1 because I am using IEEE. And then here you would get 1 that says this is my reference, right? And then I actually might start editing things differently, and now I will write something because I really think vowels are important. And then I will just cite one of them randomly, and I will, no, I think maybe it's because they are all, I don't know, doesn't matter. Let's try again. Maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. Yeah, it does not, it doesn't matter. Let's assume now this is a 2 for purposes of the demo. And then when I do this and I come here and copy the bibliography, then you get this also formatted correctly. Except that usually with the style guides, this should have been a 1 and this should have been a 2. So now you have to come and manually edit this thing, and then you spend also some time now reorganizing things. So that's fine for an out of the box functionality. You save some time because now you don't have to format things manually here. So title is in italics, the order of the fields is correct, etc. But this is still some time that you don't want to invest. So one thing you can do, let's imagine you were using Word. I'm using LibreOffice because I am in Linux, but let's imagine you were using Word. When you install Zotero, it will ask you if you want to install this additional plugin. So now let's try the same thing I was doing before. So I'm just gonna copy this text here. And instead of these references, we're just gonna go ahead and use, first of all, this one. It's gonna ask me again which style I want. I'm gonna try and choose this one. Let's hope that it listens. And now it's asking me, basically this will let me search the citations, right? So don't remember which one I was citing, it doesn't matter. Let's go with thanks for the fish. So it suggests a few things, I can choose it, hit press enter, and it enters, this is how it should have looked like when I was copying in the vault, but it didn't, it doesn't matter. Okay, so now I have a 1 in there, right? But I don't have the reference list here. So this is still missing, but I have now the option to add the bibliography. So it's done on its own. And now I can just do references here. And this should be, I don't know, a section. I would in theory, format that. But now I'm citing the second thing that we wrote, and I'm now citing this in the incorrect order. So now let's go for, what was the other one? Restaurant, something, yeah. So now I added this one, and you see this already numbers things correctly, and it adds it to the bottom of the reference list in the right order. So now I don't have to worry about doing this manually 1 by 1, changing the order in the correct order that I cited things. This is done on its own by the reference manager. If you are in academia, so let's close this one. If you are in academia, then you usually would do this with LaTeX. Right, not this one. So this is just a small preview of them. Bibliography file, but what we want is the demo file. So here I wrote like a super tiny article, also citing some of the books that we have already here. And wait, let me find the bolt again. No, okay. So I already cited them. This is LaTeX, and what's pretty neat also with LaTeX is that if you do this, then you also already get the PDF, and LaTeX already adds the title reference for you. So if you see here, I didn't really write the name of the section. This is done by LaTeX itself. And then I can also, for example, reorder things. So I'm now just shuffling things. Ooh. Okay. So now this is a different order than what we had previously. And if I compile again, did I compile? Yeah, there you go. So now, it did not compile. Probably because I didn't save. All right. Yeah, so now it's in the right order. You can also see another, interesting thing here. You have this question mark, and this question mark indicates that I'm citing something that I don't have in my library. So this also, for example, helps you a little bit when you're writing to say either I haven't really added or formatted my citation, or maybe I made a mistake on the citation that I'm using, which is also something to look out for. So now I think you probably are wondering, well, what does this have to do with Markdown, and why do I care about LaTeX or Word? You can't, I mean, there's different stages of writing, I would say. Some of you keep notes in Markdown, but maybe do the final writing on some other, yeah, either text editor or some typesetting language like LaTeX or Word. But say we wanted to use this actually with Markdown. So here is where it gets interesting. I'm not gonna go into how Pandoc does this because this is a talk that Ross is gonna give eventually. But it's the same idea. So you see here, I have already a small Pandoc demo that I already pre-filled for you. I'm also doing the same thing that we had with the LaTeX document, except that I needed to add this section at the bottom. And I'm citing according to Pandoc's formatting thing, and I already generated this so-called vib file that we will talk about a bit later. The idea is basically I can just call, this is a command line utility, and I can call it and I will get the PDF pretty much the same as I did with the LaTeX stuff. So I will just do enter, it's done. And now I have to actually open it. So let's go with, where did it go? Here you go. Yeah, so here, so just for context and why didn't it show up with the little one thing, because I'm using a different style. So here I'm using APA instead of IEEE, which was the one I was using in LaTeX, right? So this is also something that you can see that is extremely, extremely useful. You don't need to know how to style things properly. The post-processing will be done basically for you, either by Zotero or by LaTeX or by Pandoc. And if I wanted to change my mind, or I have to submit this somewhere else where they require a different citation style, then the only thing that I need to do is change one tiny variable, either in LaTeX or in the Pandoc arguments, and then I get the citations formatted appropriately. I don't have to do this manually each time for each reference that I use. Okay. Yeah, so I think that's pretty much gives you an idea of what the end result can look like in terms of final product, right? Now I'm actually using the citations, formatting them, and putting them in some document. But before that, there are a few steps that we have to do, and those usually involve taking notes and using Obsidian. So this is what we are now gonna talk about. So first, all these things I've showed you right now, you can actually do with any reference manager. You don't need Zotero for this. I don't know if all, but I would say probably most of them allow you to do all the things that I've just showed in different ways, probably different menus, things like this. So then why would you choose Zotero among all the possible options? So I think not a lot of people care about open source or not. And it might not be the deciding factor for all of you, but I don't think there is any other reference manager where you can write your plugins for. So this is why, in this case, the open source of Zotero matters. If there were other closed source reference managers where you could actually do some plugin writing, then maybe this would also help. And this is also something that we see with the Obsidian community. The fact that we have access to multiple community developed plugins and also provide some capabilities that you wouldn't have out of the box unless you write many, many support emails and then complain consistently until you actually convince someone to give you what you need or what you want. The other important thing is, or the other useful thing that you have also with Zotero is you already have some OCR included. So when you search for stuff, it actually also searches the contents of your PDF. Okay, so I think for now we are basically done with why Zotero, why reference managers. We maybe take this one question that we have so far, but if you do have some, you can anytime type in the Slido Q&A, and then the questions will show up here. Yeah, so we can choose this, what is IEEE? IEEE is, yeah, a citation style. The citation styles are defined in something called a CSL file, which I guess it stands for Citation Style Language. I'm not sure, I might be making things up. Which style to use actually depends in the end of the place where you are submitting the document you are working on. IEEE, I use IEEE because I submit stuff to IEEE. But in the end, if you submit to your, I don't know, teachers, or if you submit to a specific conference, then they will tell you which citation style to use. Then, so I've answered this one. I will keep these two other questions for the end of the talk. I can answer this one. So how much command line does my workflow need with Obsidian? 0. All the things that I'm going to show are actually just with Zotero, and they usually have, to a degree, some GUIs that you can use. What I showed with Pandoc, don't get scared. This is just basically to show you the possibilities, which, by the way, just maybe a small teaser, there is someone who is developing a Pandoc plugin in the Obsidian Discord. It's in beta right now, and they are aware that people like us need citations there. So this is something that is on the roadmap and probably will eventually get added as well. Okay, so then this one is done. What might be a better reference style for humanities? Sorry, this is out of my depth. I do not know. I've heard of both reference styles, but I don't know. I would ask the place where you're submitting stuff, which one is the suitable one for you. It might depend on the conference, for example. And yeah, it also depends on schools and institutions. Yeah, okay, I think we can move on. I'll answer this too at the very end of the talk. Okay. All right. So now we need to establish a bit of lingo. So we want to know what is going on in this screen. And one important thing, at least for me, but potentially for you, since you're using also Obsidian, is where the hell is my data? Okay, so we basically can start. I'm going to start in this order. I'm going to start first with these collections and tags. So first lingo of Zotero is this thing that I've selected here is an item. This item, usually when you add things, then has some child elements or documents, which, for example, we'll see it can include your PDF. Over here, you have fields. So the author or the authors is a field, a title, abstract, etc. And the item type, you can actually choose quite a few different ones, and they all have different fields according to the information that needs to be recorded. Over here on the left side, you have something called, well, you have your library, but these folders, I'm gonna use quotations here as well, are called collections. And these collections, let's do maybe an example. Oh, sorry. H2E2, oh, again. And then let's do maybe a new collection, books. And I don't know, let's do one under books that is called sci-fi. Right? So right now, these three are empty. But I can add, for example, let's start with this one, and I just drag and drop to sci-fi. And one neat thing from Zotero is that if you press Alt on your keyboard, it shows you to which collections it belongs, right? So, for example, if you've seen Bree's video, then there is also a lot of benefits because then you can organize things differently. So let's say now I am doing, I have a folder for projects, and I have a folder for, or a subfolder for demo. And now I can add all of this to the demo folder. And when I alt on this one actually belongs to multiple folders or multiple collections, to be more precise, which is good because then you don't have to worry about where does this belong. But it can also get unwieldy, right? Similar to tags, you also have that problem about creating multiple folders and where should this be stored, and now I have to be manually dragging this and so on. I am not a super expert on this, but you definitely can hear Bristock, and then you already have a good system to start with. The other important things are these nodes. So right now you see we have 0 nodes. So maybe we can add right click and then add node. And then I can just type some stuff. So just so you know, maybe you can even add some, let's add some markdown style things, but they are not going to be markdown. This is not markdown. All right, so just so you know, the nodes in Zotero, at least right now, this version in particular, are actually HTML. So their editor is sort of what you see, what you get style. But obviously there are going to be some limitations about what you can translate in the future to Markdown. You can abuse it a little bit by writing Markdown style stuff. And you can even do, we already had a node in the vault called Earth. So you could even write already some Obsidian style links in your nodes, and this would also help. Yeah, then the other thing is when you import items from some places, then you usually get some metadata that comes from the publisher or the site where you got these things. So for articles, it might be, or academic articles, it might be the keywords. Some places add tags in this sort of weird way. My advice would be, in general, to ditch those automatic keywords and then add your own so that they match what you use in Obsidian in the end. If you've seen Brian's talk also, then you see that you can use tags, for example, to track status. So maybe we mark this one to read. And then here, when you see this one, then I can actually filter pretty easily the items that I have. So I can just click on some, and then you get basically a fast way to filter things, right? And you can click on multiple tags as well. Yeah, I think that pretty much covers the sort of lingo. I think we do this one first, and then we check out where the data is stored. Yeah, so first question you are going to have probably is, now I want to use Zotero, but how do I add stuff? So I'm just gonna, I already prepared some stuff that we can add. And one way to do it, because there are multiple ways to do it, is to use the Zotero Clipper, I think it's what it's called. And basically, whether you get the PDF automatically depends on whether you have access to it. For example, sometimes you have to set up proxy or something like this for your library, and your library then opens access to some databases and some catalogs. But then you also have, for example, places like Archive that already provide access, open access to any sort of paper. So if we do this one, then, for example, it will ask me where to save it. In this case, this would go to the root of my library, but I could also use, okay, I was too slow. I could also use, for example, yeah, I have no idea where it sent it. And you could also use some other collection, but let's try to, yeah, let's do it like this. Saving. Yeah, there you go. Okay, so now in theory, I should, Yeah, I have no idea what's going on with the demo. For some reason, it's not saving it. I think it might be confused with which library. That's very interesting. Let's maybe refresh the page. There you go. I think it might have been stuck with my Zotero because I was using it before the talk for my own stuff. So probably it was trying to connect to the previous database, and maybe that was messing things up there. There you go. So if you see here, then I already even got the PDF automatically. So that makes it already pretty easy, right? So you just need basically to click on one thing. Yeah, so we can close this one now. The other way to do it, for example, would be some places already, for example, get recognized as books. So this is just basically an example so that we complete the collection from the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. And when I click on this thing, then you also see like the small, progress thingy, and then you basically get now the item back in your library. Yeah, we can close this one. So now here comes the bots, right? So not everything, and the key thing to remember here is that Zotero is a reference manager, so it's interested in getting the right metadata so that it can cite things appropriately. But not everything is designed in such a way that it's easy to extract the metadata, and you have a list of things that are maybe of sites that are easy to parse because Zotero has already provided some way to do it. So in this case, for example, when I try to add this episode of Cortex to my vault, okay, again, something not right. I think I know what the problem is. I'm gonna have to reload all of them because all of them were open when my previous library was open. So probably it's trying to add them to the wrong library. Yeah, there you go. So it's trying to add this snapshot, and when it's done, yeah, then now I have snapshot here. So if I click on it, then you can see that it basically opens. It saves a copy of the website that I just added, and it stores it somewhere with some weird file path, right? Okay, so we can close this one as well. Now, let's say that you want to participate in Ryan's and Bree's book club, and you need to add your reference here. The other option would be, I will copy the ISBN number. And Zotero has this tiny sort of magic wand thing where you can add basically some unique identifiers. Unique identifiers usually are these ISBN numbers, DOIs for papers, unique IDs that are used to identify pieces of published works, right? So this one basically lets me add the book. It already knows it's a book. It gets already the appropriate metadata from basically a central database that lives somewhere on the internet. Yeah, then let's close this one. So now I'm gonna give a slightly different example. And let's say, so similar to our previous example, I don't have the PDF yet, right? So I actually got this PDF from my university catalog. So I could not get basically the automatic click and play thing on Zotero. So what I'm gonna do here is instead show something slightly different. So you get the PDF from somewhere, and you can drag and drop directly into Zotero. The problem in quotations is that sometimes, usually, let's put it the other way around. Usually Zotero would be able to extract metadata from the PDF if the PDF has it. So in this case, you can see that when I dragged my PDF, it stayed a PDF. It doesn't really give me all the tabs that I should be seeing here about the metadata and the fields that I need to be able to cite this. So I have two options. One of them is with Zotfile, so I'm not gonna do that one right now. But what we're gonna do here is I have the DOI, which I will copy. And then we're gonna do basically the same process as we did before. Hope this works. Yeah, I did. So now you see the book is actually here. And now I basically can just drag and drop the PDF. And now the PDF is attached to the item that I actually used. With Zotfile, there is another trick that we can do. Maybe I can show it later. So I'm not closing this one. Another option to do this, which is maybe not the most convenient one, is to add the item manually. So you can do, for example, in this case, you would be citing a picture. Somewhere in here, there's something like an image or a photo, or it's definitely possible to cite a picture. Now I cannot see it. Presentation. Maybe it was artwork. I mean, yeah, might be because of the thing. So here, basically, you would have to fill out things by hand, right? So I don't remember what I was citing here when I was looking at this example. But let's just say I'm copying this for the author or the artist, and then I'm pasting. Then the title. I have no idea what the title is. More. Yeah, I'm gonna make up a title here based on a line. So yeah, let's see. Let's say it's like this, and then I would basically just continue filling all the fields by hand, so the citation formatting is done automatically. And you, of course, could, for example, download the picture and then attach this, just like we did with the PDF if you wanted. Funny stuff, you can also cite software. So if I do this one, let's see if it worked. No, I also have to refresh. Fine. Yeah, so if I do this one, yeah, okay, it actually worked and I just didn't see it. So now I have here, for example, the software, the date when I visited, or when it was last released, maybe, I don't know, because it's confused maybe about the time zone. The URL, and if I click on this one, it actually also opens directly the URL of the source, which is also nice, for example, for news articles and things like this. Yeah, and so forth. So you can also do this, for example, for news articles, blogs, etc. And sometimes it will be successful at getting authors, some abstract, and some metadata out of them. And when this doesn't work, then you probably have to fill in manually the missing fields. Okay, so I think we can close this one as well. I didn't add a Q&A here. Maybe I should have, but I'm just gonna go very quickly here. Because right now I've just shown you, wait, we're missing one important thing, sorry. Where is the data? Because the data, where the data is stored is actually pretty important. So you have to keep in mind that Zotero is using a database. So your data is hidden somewhere inside your computer, but it's hidden somewhere. So you have one option that comes with Zotero. Zotero gives you like 300 megabytes for syncing stuff if you have an account. But if you start to add PDFs, that's gonna get full pretty quickly. So you usually only want to, I'm not gonna log in, so I'm not gonna show this part of the setup, but you can do it and you can set it up so that it only syncs the metadata and the PDFs then stay locally. And we will see with Zotfile how to set things up so that you don't run out of space. Yeah, what you want though is to find out where your data is. And when you create or when you sync something to Zotero, then it stores this in this so-called data directory. So you can click actually on this one, and it opens the directory that you're using, right? And then here you have some storage, and then you have these weird folders where we, for example, just added this knowledge graph. But based on the name of the folder, I would never be able to find the file that I want to use. And if I want to back this up, and sometimes, I don't know, so at some point Zotero dies or something, then finding the stuff that I actually want to have access to is just going to be a pain. So one thing, so Zotfile helps us actually in dealing with this later on. And you can also split out of the box. Yeah, I should have thought about this maybe. Okay, so I'm just gonna use this here, Zotero data. I don't know if it was data. I'm not gonna do it because we would have to restart and do some other stuff. But you can basically choose a separate spot to store the data so that it doesn't live in this default directory, and this will also help a little bit with managing the space and with having less weird file names. Okay. I hope I don't need this. We might have to revisit if I don't need it for Zotfile because I don't remember. Okay, so just then quickly, why do you need then plugins, or why don't we just use Zotero stock? Basically because of the things I just mentioned right now. So saving stuff in the right spots, the unique IDs, then it's hard right now to see or to differentiate, for example, directly already from the Hitchhiker books. All of them are by Adams, but I might not be able to uniquely reference them unless I use exclusively citations. And then I don't have a visually, I don't visually have a unique ID that I can refer to. And obviously then you also want to export to Markdown, right? So I just left the resources here. And here comes actually one big shout out to Kat, because Kat wrote a pretty detailed write-up of how to do this, basically what I'm going to show now. So if you also want a written version, you can visit the forum. Kat's write-up is pretty great and pretty comprehensive, and it has a bunch of screenshots. So what I'm basically going to try to do with the rest of the talk is yeah, to provide like examples for what Kat is doing here, and maybe show some variations that so that Kat doesn't have to pretty much document all the possible combinations. So we can play a little bit around with different options and see how that looks, and maybe try different formattings. Okay, then we can maybe do, I should have added also a Q&A here. But I didn't. All right. What we can do right now is, if you do want to follow along and you downloaded the plugins, we can install them right now. So this is what I'm going to do right now. I'm just gonna use okay. So these are the 3 plugins that we want to install, except the idle slide. And what we have to do, I'm sorry, because this one now got cut off, so I'm going to move briefly here. So what we have to do is just go to Tools, Add-ons, and these 3 files that I already selected called XPI, you basically drag and drop to the window that will show up. So this is what I'm going to show you. You are not going to see the instructions for a tiny bit right now because it makes it weird. But then basically this thing pops up. I drag and drop. And I remember now when I was trying this out last time. Now it worked. Last time it didn't want me to do 3 at a time. So right now we have 2. I'm missing Zotfile. Yeah, okay. All right, so now we have this, the 3 of them here. I can close this now, I think. I hope. Maybe I didn't. I shouldn't have closed it. It doesn't matter. Yeah, so now I can restart Zotero so that the plugins take effect. It's pretty neat. So now we have deep tech is initializing. Zotfile likes to do this. So it opens the changelog so that you know what was the last thing. And now we can start to set things up. Right, I think maybe we should have paused a little bit. What do you think, Nick? Should we take some questions?
Yeah, let's go for it.
Mm-hmm.
Let's take some questions.
All right. So I have one here. Zotero can find PDFs from us. Where does it get them from? And is there a limit on which PDFs it can find for you? It gets them from the website that you give it. So for example, let's go here to knowledge graphs. And this one, you have basically the URL. And this URL, I already have, I think, one of them here. Basically, people have written a certain parser for the web page. So you have the web page, and then people have manually written how to find stuff within that page, how to identify the authors in the whole text with maybe certain regex patterns or something like this. And it also maybe identifies where the PDF is located. I'm not exactly sure how it does it in the background. It works, in my case, for example, it works for some websites, but when I try to download things with, for example, IEEE, which requires an institutional sign-in, it doesn't work, even though I do have access to the PDF and it's seeing it in the browser. So it depends. It's not always successful. Yeah, so we answered this one. Can you put your Zotero database in Dropbox? You could. I don't know if it's recommendable. I think you should be fine as long as you close Zotero when you don't use your laptop. And if you are planning on putting the Zotero database in Dropbox so that you can use it on multiple laptops, then don't use it simultaneously. But I wouldn't put it in Dropbox. I think the setup that you can do with Zotfile and with the Zotero account is sufficient so that you can sync the relevant stuff. So if you remember when we saw the preferences here, the sync tab has this username. So if you create an account in Zotero, this will let you basically sync the, let's look at, for example, knowledge graph. So it will sync the metadata contained in this top level item, but you can set it up so it doesn't sync the PDF. And then with Zotfile a little bit later on, then we can dig in the settings so that the PDFs, for example, are organized in a certain way, and then those you can sync with Dropbox. You basically split the two things so that you don't rely also on Zotfile to store all your PDFs as well, because that so you can expand the space that you get from them, but it costs no. It's basically up to you if you want to go for that. Yeah, so if you change your data directory, will everything move to the new one automatically? No, that was the trick that we saw with the message when I was trying to do the moving. You have to close Zotero, then you basically move the contents of that folder to the other folder. I can do a demo at the end if we want, and if we don't need it for Zotfile, because I honestly don't remember if this was requirement. Okay. What are my opinions for using Zotero as a personal library for everything, not only books and papers, but also podcasts, blogs, etc. My personal opinion is that it's not great. So I think I personally use Zotero only for PDFs, books, and things where you can get the metadata automatically, because otherwise inputting the metadata by hand is a bit time consuming. But it depends on what you want to, like with everything, it depends what you want to do with this or why you want this type of contents in Zotero. If you plan to cite them because you want to reference them and you want to credit them for something that you're working on, then definitely they should belong in Zotero. but I don't. So I basically, the content where I need to cite things is based on academic stuff. So I only add papers or books that I need to cite. Does that browser plugin work for YouTube videos and IMDb pages? It does work for IMDb pages. I don't know if it works for YouTube videos, and I don't know if I have, if I can set an example. But I would try it. I would guess yes. One way we can find out already is if we look at this list of so-called translators. These translators are just the terms that Zotero uses for scraping. So if I try to find YouTube, yeah, so there is already a YouTube translator. Most likely it's able to get at least some metadata from it. So yeah, you could most likely do that. IMDb definitely works. This one I've tried in the past for testing. Yeah, I would like more information on how to set the Zotero proxy to it. I don't think you can set up the Zotero proxy directly here. But I also haven't tried before. So the way I do it, at least for my university, I set up the proxy in Firefox. And Firefox basically lets you configure this directly with some automation. Most likely the library, if the library has some remote access service set up, then it has instructions on how to set it up for the browsers and or for reference managers. So I would ask there basically. I have Zotero. Yeah, this is different. Sometimes when I use the citation plugin Word, it usually adds the first and last name of the author using APA. I just want to display the last name. Not sure I understand this question. Maybe try asking it again, and maybe I answered this one when it comes to big text. When annotations are converted to Markdown, is it okay to rename the MD file before moving to Obsidian? Yeah, we get to this one later on. Okay, I think, how do you add new fields? I manually add data for podcasts. I need to type the date it aired, and I don't have that field. So I would suggest probably you have podcast, and yeah, you don't have date. This is weird. So Zotero is somewhat strict about the types of items that it adds. It's not easy to convince them to add new types of data here. And what they do is, for example, in the case of podcasts, they have some documentation about how to use the extra field. So you would usually add here manually date aired or something like this, depending. They probably have some instructions on their website about this. But if you add, let's say, some extra fields here and the citation style recognizes them as appropriate, then when you cite, it will get information from this extra box. New fields, yes. Okay, I think the next ones are more about MD notes process and yeah, do you need plugins for Obsidian or are the plugins just for Zotero? So depends on how you're viewing the question. I would say the plugins I'm gonna show, so I'm gonna give you reasons why you need them, and maybe this is the key to move on.